Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of RPG Horror Stories from Reddit with DnD Doge. In today's video, we have a few tales about why it might not be a good idea for dungeon masters to put players in no-win situations, a story about a group that seems to be ganging up on one particular player, and more. So, without further ado, let's get right into these stories. No Escape by Reddit user Quiet Elegance. We're starting a new game with a group of friends, just getting used to playing online after we'd moved away after college. DM was new to running games, so I ascribe most of the issues here to nervousness and or inexperience. The game was 5th edition homebrew. I was playing an elf barbarian with the noble background, a warrior princess kind of vibe. The other players are a bard, monk, and warlock. Things start out rough. Everyone is in a small town for one reason or another when goblins attack. They light the inn on fire before anyone realizes what is happening. Our characters run out, some fighting the goblins, and some trying to get water onto the fire. But we're told that the inn has fully burned down in 2 turns. The fight goes poorly. We're all level 3, and enemies keep coming, with hobgoblins being added into the mix. After 5 rounds, I'm the only one left alive, and I'm wounded. My character doesn't know these people, so she takes off. I'm playing a wood elf eagle totem barbarian, so I'm dashing down the road and outpacing the goblins rapidly. The dungeon master tells me that they catch up anyway, and throw javelins into my back until I'm down. It turns out that the plan was for us all to die and be raised by a mage as some kind of gesh. Only none of us knew this until it happened, so I just dragged the combat out for 3 extra rounds as the temporary sole survivor. The DM was irritated. I felt bad at the time, and we only got half of what was planned done in session 1. While railroading in games like Dungeons & Dragons does need to be done in some extent in order to get things moving, especially in session 1, it's probably not the best idea to have it be in a way that the party has to fail, because there will always be a chance, no matter how slim, that a player may be able to throw a wrench in those plans. I don't think that the DM in this case had any right to be angry at that player for having the character run away. Like OP said, their character just met these people, and wouldn't just stand around to be offed. Plus, the inn completely burned down in 2 rounds? That's only 12 seconds. What was it made out of? Paper? Anyways, let's move on. I almost died during the railroad cutscene by Reddit user Admirable Mongoose 53. So, in a previous post, I mentioned being in a kind of lackluster party, so this is somewhat a sequel. We're still alive somehow, but the last session left a rather bad taste in my mouth. In order to set up the plot, we were tasked with hunting down an evil wizard, as we're part of an army of adventurers. But what we weren't told was that we were supposed to be mass suggestioned into sleeping for a year, a 9th level spell. Well, at least, that was what was supposed to happen. This wizard rolled highest, cast the spell, and got all 3 wizards, leaving me and the archer still up. Somehow he cast again before our turns, but another good roll keeps me standing, and I get a turn. Now, as a level 5 Conquest Paladin, I have extra attack, spiritual weapon, and divine smite, so I basically offload as much damage as I can into this guy. Which he survived, by the way, but I did something like 60 damage. The Dungeon Master had him cast a 3rd 9th level mass suggestion in order to finally bring me down, but I was told that I was supposed to just fall asleep at the start, and if I'd stayed up despite the 3rd casting, I'd have been disintegrated. I feel a bit bad about it, especially because my Dungeon Master now thinks that I'm a min-maxer, though my stats after half-work boosts are 17, 14, 16, 10, 11, and 14. Well, like I said in regards to the previous story, there is always a chance that a player can escape from a situation that you don't want them to. At this point, If you are a DM that wants to have something happen to your players and don't plan for any of them to get past it, just have it happen. Having them roll for it and say that the character will just die if they keep passing is not the way to go. And with the DM stating that if OP kept passing, that would be the result, I would just nope out of that game. On to the next one. Roll for Everything by Reddit user Vaguely Certain. Not that horrible in the grand scheme of things, but the guy has passed my threshold at this point, and I need to vent. So, I'm sure everyone that has ever dungeon mastered has experienced this issue. You want the players to roll some dice, so you call for a check for something that should be obvious with some half-baked DC in mind, and then everyone fails. Whoops, you feel embarrassed, but hopefully it's a learning curve, and you try to make this mistake less frequently in the future. At the very least, try to avoid checks that aren't going to stall the game if everyone fails. Not this guy. Want to see if there's writing on a wall? Roll a check. Want a statue actually described to you? Roll a check. Can your character remember how to breathe? Roll a check. By the way, the minimum DC is 10 in 5e, no matter how basic the check. The vast majority of checks convey no information beyond what you would have actually seen at a glance. No matter how high you roll, it will frequently be 15 or more actions that a child could complete successfully. And the guy just does not seem to be capable of learning. The most recent session featured multiple high DC investigation checks, and when we predictably failed them, we just had to wander around in circles poking things with 10-foot poles. Meanwhile, I look out the window at the glorious sunshine and wonder what on earth I'm doing with my life. That certainly sounds like that would become monotonous. Asking for a check from players can help make a game more engaging and interesting, like investigating a statue closely to look for clues, or trying to percept someone following the party. But to ask for a check for everything that a sentient person could just do at a glance is overkill. I would suggest talking to the DM and bringing up these issues. Otherwise, it's likely to continue, and OP will just continue to be staring out a window, wondering what if. Though he'd probably have to roll a check to see if it's sunny out or not. But one thing you'll never have to roll for is whether or not one of my videos will have a kitty break. There we go. Now I think that we're ready for today's final story. Game Master laughs at me every time I contribute and gets mad when I want to leave. By Reddit user Transcribe. It was my first year in college. Like most freshmen, I was both excited and nervous about getting to meet so many new people. I eventually became friends with 3 girls from my class: Kate, Eve, and Abby. When we were talking about our hobbies, they got excited when I told them how I was GMing for a Vampire the Masquerade campaign. They all said they had always wanted to play tabletop RPGs, especially Dungeons & Dragons. I said that I would have been delighted to GM for them, but since I unfortunately didn't have the time and resources to GM 2 campaigns, I would still have to wait a bit until my schedule opened up and we could start. Anyway, they eventually found someone else to GM a Dungeons & Dragons campaign for them. It was some guy from class who I didn't know that well. Let's call him Charlie. Charlie seemed very shy, but also incredibly intelligent and studious. We didn't talk a lot though. My other 3 friends said that I would be welcome to join once I found the time. Fast forward to 6 months later, and my Vampire the Masquerade campaign had wrapped up. And I had also made another good friend from another major, Angela. Angela was really fun and excited about trying D&D. When the others invited both of us, I also sent Charlie a private message. This was the first time that we had talked beyond small talk, and I think I kinda effed it up by leaving a bad first impression. I wanted to check if it was okay for him to have 2 new people join. I guess in my head it made sense. I just wanted to make sure that he didn't agree to it just because the others wanted him to. He got defensive, saying that he knew what he was doing and that he had GM'd for a way larger group of first-timers before. I tried to explain what I meant, but when he didn't reply, I apologized for asking, and that was that. Well, I think that was a bit of an overreaction on Charlie's part. The defensiveness shows a lack of self-confidence if you ask me. First, we had some kind of mid-campaign session 0 for when Angela and I joined. Angela, who was meeting everybody for the first time, hit it off super well with the rest of the group, and we were all cracking jokes and having a good time. I played a dwarven paladin who grew up in a cult, and it was nice to see that everyone seemed to like my idea. The one thing I remember was Charlie asking if I had any tabletop RPG experience. I said that I had been a player in a D&D campaign before, and he said, "So, you've never actually been a GM?" And I responded with something along the lines of, "Well, not in D&D, but I have been GMing since high school, but mostly Vampire the Masquerade." Somehow, the mention of Vampire the Masquerade made him burst out into cackling laughter, and the rest of us kind of chuckled along. I thought that maybe he had just been nervous or surprised or something. I didn't know what was so funny, but I was sure he was laughing with me, not at me. He then said in a dramatic tone, "Vampire the Masquerade," and kind of rolled his eyes. I thought it was some light teasing, so I laughed and then said something about him being cheekier than I expected him to be, which might have been the second time I effed up, because he just exchanged a glance with one of the girls after that. We started playing the actual game in the following session, but those moments where I would say something and he would just burst into laughter just kept piling up, and I wasn't even really trying to be funny. So I started feeling more and more confused. He didn't do it with the others, but it also wasn't enough at first to justify speaking out. I mean, maybe that was just his thing. The first time I felt hurt was 2 sessions later when we were investigating something in-game and heading to a church. There were NPCs around, so I suggested in character that we could ask around if anybody had seen or heard something. Again, Charlie, as the GM, started to wheeze and laugh. The others then proceeded as if nothing had happened, and I got ignored in and out of character. I then just said something like, "Actually, that wasn't supposed to be a joke. It was an honest suggestion." I remember Charlie being annoyed when I said that for some reason. There was just kind of an awkward silence after that, and then Kate just sighed after a while and said that we probably wouldn't want to waste time and attract attention, so that was a pretty crappy idea. At the moment, I wasn't sure if she was saying this in or out of character, but I was super surprised by the way everyone acted, so I didn't say anymore. I mean, we were not investigating in secret, but it was still a fair point. It's fine to reject an idea, but the way everyone acted irked me a bit. No, I don't agree that that was a fair point. Asking NPCs in an investigation would be very logical, and for the DM and the other players to treat OP this way, it tells me that there's something else going on here. This kept happening, and sometimes I would even mention that it made me uncomfortable. When I did say something, the mood would instantly get painfully awkward. Some of the things that Charlie, inappropriately in my honest opinion, laughed at included when I make a mistake calculating something in battle, when I forgot that I had a spell that could have been helpful in a specific situation, although I was sure that I had already used that spell slot, when we were talking about homework before the session started, and I honestly mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the amount, when I cheered for the others about a good roll or a good idea, or when I complimented the picture Eve drew of her character. Every time my character wanted to do something that wasn't just going along with whatever another character was doing, like when we were all standing in front of one chest trying to unlock it, and I said my character would investigate the room more closely, or something like that. When I mentioned not feeling well and having to leave early. Then, when we gave feedback after the session, I tried one final time to convey how I felt about this. I implied that I had often been made fun of in school, and that this sometimes felt the same way, like whatever I did was somehow ridiculous. Charlie and the 4 other players were trying to tell me how it was a misunderstanding. I then asked what Charlie meant, like why did he think it was so funny when I said really basic things, but I didn't understand his explanation. He said he was just laughing because he felt like it. Was it a nervous laugh? No, just a laugh. But then why was I the only one who he did this to? Oh, it was a coincidence. I then asked if, even if Charlie didn't have any bad intentions, if he could maybe tone it down a bit, as a personal request or favor, considering how unwelcome I felt. Like, I had already explained my situation from the past, and why this was so hard for me. And he laughed again, in the same drawn-out cackling way, asking if I intended to ban smiles and laughter at the table, and everyone else seemed pissed off. I tried to explain my perspective again, but they just said that I shouldn't be so sensitive. Eventually, I had to get home, and once I realized how drained I felt and how I wasn't enjoying myself anymore, I decided to text Charlie, and I once again sought to explain why I was struggling with the group dynamic. I also told him that I had concluded that maybe it would be better if I left the group. I had a lot of other stress with schoolwork and everything else, so I assured Charlie that it wouldn't just be because of that. But he said that all of us had a lot of work to do for school, some of us much more than me specifically, and that leaving would be a pretty crappy thing to do. It would be a big letdown for everyone who put so much work into this campaign. I apologized, but I stood by my decision. I did, however, agree to play one final campaign so we could play out my character leaving. I didn't expect everyone to be so pissed at me. I had somehow become that guy. My friends were kind of avoiding me. Kate asked me why I just never talked this out with Charlie, but I said that I had tried many times. As that final campaign crept closer and closer, and the others even met up for things like studying or going to the movies and stuff without telling me, I got more and more anxious about how much this was going to suck. So eventually, I cut my losses and canceled the goodbye campaign. I ended up dropping out of college for unrelated health reasons after that, although it certainly didn't help that my entire friend group made me feel like an a-hole, even though I tried to get along with them. I don't see them anymore, and the last thing I heard was that Charlie and Angela, the woman that I introduced to the friend group, had started dating. I don't know if it was because I was queer or not as pretty as the other players, or because he felt intimidated that I already had some experience, or because I maybe actually messed up too much. But I still don't understand why everybody treated me like this, and what my ex-friends saw in this guy, who was being unnecessarily mean in my honest opinion, and refused to see things from my point of view. Yeah, there was definitely something going on there. For some reason, after this Charlie dude came into the picture, it sounds like he started bullying OP with the game, and the others just kinda went along with it. From what OP said in the post, I think that Charlie was very insecure, and her having experience in tabletop RPGs may have intimidated him. So he took OP calling him cheeky in a playful way as a slight, and just proceeded to treat OP like crap. Perhaps the girls all had some sort of attraction to Charlie, and when he started treating OP like that, they did the same thing to get in his good graces or something. It sounds like some stupid type of high school clique type crap. But they were freshmen in college, so perhaps they just didn't grow out of that crap yet. And unfortunately, some people never do. Luckily, OP did state later in the comments that they did eventually find some other games after this, and hasn't had anything like this happen since. So at least there's a bit of a happy ending here. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.